Okay. Yeah. Roy was suggesting to push the fees discussion to the second part of the meeting because of late arrivals.
That sounds good. So we have an actual agenda, which there you go. I've just popped in the hedge doc to make sure we get our hackathon and 118 state in order. So that will be a good thing to do in the first half, and then we can get the there's been a lot of activity in the PRs, and I'm very hopeful that the editors and collaborators can get that thing pushed through. So yeah, putting that in the second half sounds good to me.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, it's very good to see the activity on the with the PRs. So looks like we are making progress there.
So I will not personally be at 118 this time. Sending Cedric and hopefully Antoine to go.
Thanks.
So you can't make it?
No, I'm going to be in Hawaii. You know, Hawaii or Prague wins.
Okay. Yeah, that could be worse, right?
Yes, you're right. It could be worse.
I'm playing over here. I'm not buying it.
Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, fiddle player. You seem to time Hawaii regularly here.
I wonder why. My wife does not like the gray.
Well, yeah, there's that.
So I had to come to Chelan this weekend, Steve. Someone updated the router here and reset my Wi-Fi so that it had no passwords on it.
Somebody's hacking you.
Yeah, well,
I see the squirrels running around the lake.
It's the marmots. Come on, it's marmots. The number of devices I had to go and reset Wi-Fi on was just like, wow.
Yeah.
Guys, it's 2 minutes past the hour. Should we get started?
Yes, please.
Okay, I will take notes. I also realized that we took notes of past meetings, but we didn't click the button to upload them to the website. And so I'm going to do that like while we are talking.
Thank you, Hannes. We'll miss you.
Yes. Should we do a note of recognition and thank you for Hannes here? Or?
I'm not dead. I'm just.
Oh gosh.
Oh, that was awesome.
That was perfect, Hannes.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so yeah. Now 4 minutes past. So from the agenda, top item for this week, and next, which I think is our last interim, if I have the order correct, is being ready for 118. There are two main things that I think we need to consider. One is the hackathon, which I'm usually kind of obsessed with, but there's also document submission deadlines to think about. So we need to make sure that anything that's getting closed up, which I think would be use cases, Scrappy, and the architecture, those will need to be in a fit state for submission in the next, I think, 10 days or so. Is that right, Hannes?
Next Monday.
Next Monday. Oh, so it's next 7 days. Right, great.
Yep.
So yeah, it will be really important to talk about the PRs that are up. Agree to merge the ones that we agree with, which hopefully will be the same as the ones that the collaborators have been collaborating on, and then get the thing submitted. Is there anything else before we start talking about the hackathon? Is there anything else that people think is important to prepare for 118? I'll take that as a no. Great. So
there is one. Obviously, we need to ask for presenters, so we have to sort this out. Like it's kind of obvious on what documents we would be talking about, but at least the group should make up, or specifically the author should make up their mind on who wants to talk about what issues.
The intersection of SPICE into this. Somebody has to do a little bit of binding between the two of them.
that was you, wasn't it, Roy?
What do you mean by?
Because a proposal for a BOF for SPICE, isn't there?
There is a proposal for BOF, which I'm going to co-chair. Yep.
Right. So somebody in the SCITT group should at least do a 10-minute intersection of how that applies to SCITT on that working group.
Okay.
It's just a suggestion, honestly.
Okay. Good. Mm-hmm.
And the other thing to probably intersect is the epoch work that Hank had done, how that intersects as well.
Yeah, I'm actually not aware of what Hank has done.
What?
So what did Hank, what did you do?
Somehow this sounds bad. Hi, this is Hank. Epoch marker are a way to indicate epochs, or the new ages of freshness in the security domain. They're like time ticks. Effectively, one of them, there are different payloads, and one of them could be a signed timestamp, like a timestamp token acquired from a TSA. TSA RFC is like, I don't know, old, and we are redoing that payload with CBOR. And like, yeah, you could do a signed timestamp from a secure clock that is endorsed, or other things to announce your epoch in your domain. So that's basically like a timestamp, but it's effectively a tick for freshness. Whenever you have freshness intervals and things go stale over time, like a remote attestation, and after the fact, you want to prove that sometimes that it was fresh at once upon a time using an epoch marker, and that would be a content of a SCITT statement in a nutshell.
Okay, thanks, Hank.
Okay, so while Hannes is typing up that one, any more inputs? It feels like we'll obviously go out to the mailing list and ask, but it feels like some potential rats update, cozy update is important, unless people actually disagree.
No, I think it's perfectly valid.
Cool. So
the other topic that was still out there that we kind of pushed was endorsements, but we have to decide whether we'll let that slide or whether we have to pick it up again.
And what? Yeah, endorsements in exactly what sense, Roy? Because it's a very overused word.
So in the case of, we already have SSDF claims and evidence for the EO for software supply chain, but most customers and larger groups want an auditor to review that and generate just a simple endorsement. This gets to where the U.S. government wants to move away from self-attestation of self-signing of material. They want to be able to also do their own endorsement capabilities, which aren't necessarily tied to evidence. And we've talked about that in the past, but we just parked it for a long time. Like, I don't expect customers or end users, and Dick has gone around many times with this, they don't want to see 200 pieces of evidence and make their own decision. They're looking for somebody to simplify it down and make a statement. And that's where endorsements came in. And we thought they would be fairly generic across multiple use cases, so they were worthwhile having in this charter.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, maybe there's a room for this being the next area of focus, or sort of, at least having some candidates for the next area of focus, because I think we couldn't really move past the individual statements with the state of the document as it was last time. But if we get over that hump with the pull request we're reviewing today, then we can start getting back into those more practical questions. So sounds very plausible as a next thing to do.
Yeah, if we are into next thing, maybe endorsements and the related topic of registration policies.
Yeah.
Which, So still in terms of thinking with other teams, are we planning to do something with a key transparency, or just see where they are in their session?
What was that, Cedric? Sorry.
So I'm wondering if we need to prepare something for in relation to key transparency, understand what they do, maybe try to synchronize more explicitly with them.
Yes, that was an open issue at the last working group. I think Ori stood up there and took the arrows in the mud and the stones.
Yeah, Ori's got his hand up to tell us how good or bad that experience was.
Surprised.
Ori, go ahead.
It seems like it went well. Key Transparency has a working group. I'm now one of the co-chairs of it. I'll make sure to align whatever it is that we need to know about it in SCITT. But I think for now we don't need to do anything, and we can just let them continue to work on what they're working on, and we can focus on working what we're working on. And I don't think there's any need to go out of our way to attempt to align them at this point.
Okay, that's nice and simple. Thanks.
I think Ori's trying to say the bruises are still healing from the last time.
So they do have a buff at 118, right?
No, I think it's formed as a working group already. It's past the buff state, but I think when the agenda was prepared, it was still in a buff state.
I see. Okay, thanks.
Yogesh.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, they are doing remarkably similar work what we did. So was there any discussion, Ori, about them coming on board with us on SCITT and enhancing the SCITT specification rather than having two parallel specs? We're roughly talking about the same kind of language and same kind of objectives. That's what all I want to know.
It is. It looks remarkably similar, but it is not in two aspects. One aspect is there are different privacy aspects that they want to consider in their design, which requires an additional sort of variant of a metal tree. And then the other aspect is, which we are not using, and the other aspect is in terms of what type of information goes in there. At least my understanding is that they are very much focused on a username to public key binding. And Ori, I'm sure you will correct me if I'm wrong, but that also, like, these two factors make it different to what we are doing.
Maybe I may have to read this again, but I thought that they're just talking about some data, metadata to be put in the transparency service, and that data is some credentials, right? So why can't we just absorb their spec and say we can do it this way? Putting the credentials as one example, they become one example of our overall architecture.
So this is Hank. Sorry for skipping the line here, but this has to be seen how useful it is. So the interoperability scope of key trends is down to none. I think there's no expectation that key trends works outside a given solution. So I want to give this words, and please don't listen to my marketing. So if messenger A has 1 billion users and messenger B has 200 million users, it is expected for key trends to work for these messengers and not between these messengers. It could, but the expectation, I think, is low.
Ori has his hand up. Maybe he wants to add.
Yeah, so I mean, this has all been discussed on the mailing lists. Basically what Hank said, they have a different mental model and different interoperability constraints, and they're not compatible with the approach that SCITT is taking. And we're taking we're going to work with CBOR, we're going to work with Cozy. We have opinionation. They don't have that. So they're not compatible with us in that context. At the like raw cryptographic layer or kind of abstract sort of conceptual layers, there's, you know, alignment there, but in terms of work that you could do and standardization, writing documents, building on Cozy, there isn't opportunity for alignment right now. That might change in the future, but it's been discussed on the list. So you can review the commentary on the list to see like why.
Okay, thanks. Ray has his hands up as well.
Yeah, it sounds like I believe from what I heard on this, Hank is probably expressing my view that it's going to be, it would probably be very counterproductive for us to try to get and to make that within SCITT, because it's going to subvert our attention from kind of the main use case that we have in our eyes, because they're such a big monster. So I would try to avoid it. I think the way it's heading now is right. I wanted to say this other thing. I didn't want to change the subject, but I've been meaning to work on this for a while. Hopefully right after today, I'll be able to have some time. I won't be able to go to 1.8 because I have some competition with other events, and since, but I do think we're going to need this little bit higher level of, as I said before, API that will be suitable for people to kind of dig their teeth into. I think it will kind of answer a lot of the things that people are now trying to shovel into feed and parameters in the header, that they are worried that, gee, there's not going to be much, there's not going to be much harmony in how people are using these, and so it's just going to be a big mess. Yeah, that'd be true if we don't have this upper level of specification to say, here's how you use these parameters. And so I've been kind of waiting to see what happens with feed, but and to kind of understand the architecture better. But I think I'm going to have some time and be ready, but I'm not going to be able to go to the meeting to really do it. So, but I'll prepare at least one document on the subject. Thanks.
Okay, Dick, you're next in the queue.
Yes, thank you, John. So I just want to chime in and say that I agree with Ray 100% that the API is going to be a critical success factor, especially with regard to consumer adoption. I know I've used the analogy, a trust registry, using the registry of deeds as an example. I think this API is going to be, as I've said, a critical success factor that we could put more attention to. Thanks.
John, are you going to tell us something about the hackathon targets or plans?
Well, I want to have a similar discussion. I think we found a lot of things here. So the natural thing that we discussed coming out of 17, including when there was this PR that Ori put up ages ago, which was thoughts coming out of 117, I think has been merged now, was to concentrate on getting the identification and fetching of statements/receipts out of a usable API. So just sort of marrying together some of the stuff that Ray and Dick most recently said about needing the API to be functional and fit for use cases. We were looking at, can we work out how to put an identifier into the artifact, that's a bad word, into the data elements that are flowing in and out of SCITT components, such that they're useful to things like the FDA's use case from last time, or some suitable other software tracing use case that we care to come up with. So essentially adding a concrete model of feeds and systematizing things built on top of SCITT building blocks was the target, and I'm perfectly happy for that to remain the target. But equally, if other people have other things they would like to do, such as we've had John Anderson put in a number of things, but in particular we've got this authentication on the front end. So if people would prefer to see how authentication is compatible with this sort of open transparency model, that would also be a good thing to do, or any other thoughts. So my plan is implement Scrappy on more than one implementation. That's what I think I will personally work on. And I do that mostly because, of course, I don't edit the spec, but I like to make sure it actually works. But if other people have other targets they'd like to do, which bring forward this idea of either epochs or registration policies or endorsements, obviously we can entertain all of those. So, Ori?
Yeah, I think implementing the APIs is a really good idea. Writing tests around that, implementing it, adjusting the interfaces, maybe even exploring, QR codes or data URIs or sort of other sort of tangential pieces to a functioning API. That could all be great work. One of the things that I wanted to work on at the hackathon was just command line sort of experiences. So some command line tool hacking to visualize the conceptual messages, the envelopes, that kind of thing. John Anderson had also worked on some policy pieces and other kind of command line argument details that I thought was interesting. So yeah, those are just ideas for the hackathon, but I really wanted to focus on just command line tooling this hackathon, and part of that could be command line tooling that supports the Scrappy APIs. Like that would be a great thing to work on. That's it.
Cool. Going up next.
Hi, this is Charlie. One thing that would be good to do, I think, at some point, not sure if 118 is the right time, but kind of run through the various user functions that need to be defined for an implementation. You know, for example, enter a statement, notarize a statement. Retrieve trustworthiness information, etc. I think that would really be helpful in visualizing the tools that we're going to need in the back end. API is going to be central, but what APIs? What are they going to do? And I guess looking forward to a practical implementation of this and adoption. How am I, as an unsophisticated user? I feel like in this group I am kind of unsophisticated, but I think there's going to be a lot less sophisticated people than me even trying to implement this thing. Need to think about that practical aspect of what are the steps in performing each of these functions. It might be more of a tabletop exercise than an actual hackathon, but I think it would be very valuable.
Right. Are you going to be there and have time?
At this point, unfortunately, I'm not going to be there. I got some other commitments that I have to do, but maybe next time that we can put that on the list.
Yeah, I asked because I'll just put as a thought to the group, that is a really important, useful thing to do, to have the sort of activity diagrams for how the thing actually is intended to hang together. So if we manage to get that done during the hackathon, of course, that would also be a really useful thing to present in the meeting. So yeah, great idea.
Yep. Thanks.
Dick, then Henk.
Okay, thank you, John. So yeah, I agree with what Charlie's saying. I think it goes back to the whole point about you need to make this practical. If this is not something that is of practical value to people, then adoption will be slim, or at least slow at the very best. So I put a little example in the chat just to show you what we do with regard to labeling. That might be a good example of an API call that uses a QR code to retrieve information. So you can easily imagine that data coming out of a SCITT registry. But again, I want to go back to the point about referring to the Registry of Deeds model. I think is a good one because it represents the kind of interactions that we might anticipate here, where a party who's authorized to put something into a registry submits that, and a party who's interested in reviewing information in the registry has access to it using the APIs. So I think it's a really good model that we may want to give more consideration to. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, this is Hank. Just to the previous comment that the next IETF attendance might be easier. I just want to highlight it's in Brisbane, Australia. So everybody who might think that Prague is far away, yeah, just that.
So who do we actually have in Prague? So I saw from the chat window, Ori is there, John is there, Steve will be there.
Yep.
Yogesh, I believe, mentioned that he will be there.
Yes, for the 2 days I will be there, Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not there for the week, for Monday?
We'll be attending online from here. Yeah.
Yogesh, are you planning to hack something with us in the SCITT group?
I can help, lend a helping hand. I will be 50% with SCITT and 50% with rats. So
Okay, yeah, you can add rats to SCITT.
that's a good one, actually. Yeah. It's
Okay.
yeah.
Who else? Hank, you would be there, right? At the hackathon, I mean.
Yes, of course. I will be on site. I will be arriving for the Think2Think research group meeting already.
Oh, when is that?
Friday.
Oh,
before the hackathon.
Oops.
Friday. Okay. One
Yeah,
day
it's been
before
announced
that.
on the T2T RG list.
Okay.
So definitely there. Reds is on Wednesday, Cozy is on Tuesday, SCITT is on Monday.
So, Steve, I think you wanted to keep.
Yeah, just for the hackathon. One of the things, you guys were all talking about the ability to kind of validate some of the designs by hacking at APIs and command lines and so forth. And Ori and I've been bantering about this as well, of just how can we make some more updated progress. We have the SCITT API emulator out there, but it's gotten a little stale. Ori's gotten some really great examples with SCITT XYZ. So if we can, I'd love to see if we can get some concentrated effort on an update to the current versions of the specs and testing if we like it translating from Markdown to code. So might be an area of the hackathon to update what we want to do as an API emulator, whether it's updating the existing one or replacing it with something else. Either way, it'd be really good to have an implementation update. And if who's interested, it'd be great to know, and we can see if we can facilitate that.
Cool, thanks, Steve. So I'll put myself off the queue. Yeah, so just I'm interested, and I think as others have said, having that thing actually running is really crucial. So definitely there'll be some activity on running APIs, rough consensus and running code and all of that. The thing I actually put my hand up for was to recognize, as Hank just mentioned, that we are early on Monday. And so to anybody interested and helpful enough to do a session, a section of presenting, we need to get that done during the hackathon, which is a bit of a shame. I guess we can get it done before the hackathon as well, but we're on Monday morning. So material needs to be in sort of Sunday night, really, just for planning purposes. Thanks. AJ?
What Steve was talking about, I'm willing to pitch in whatever, however. I'm coming for the hackathon and the week following. And since I'm kind of newer to the group, I don't know if I have expert level awareness or understanding, but if we need people to pitch in to be ready first thing, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, or some other metaphor on Monday, I will pitch in as I need it once boots are on the ground and we all meet. You all can tell me where I can be most useful. I'm down to help however you need. That's it.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so looks like, oh no, not quite. We're halfway through, so I want to move on to the PRs, but Dick, if you have a last word about the hackathon, go ahead.
I just had a question, John. So AJ, who are you affiliated with? I'm not familiar with your name.
we're all individuals, right? I work for the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the Computer Security Division of the IT Lab, but people call it ITL. I'm probably the only person to say IT Lab in the history of the org.
Dick,
Okay.
you actually know HA because he was at the hackathon last time as well. You may just not remember.
Yeah, I don't know if Dick was there, but he not in person, but I was there in San Francisco at 117. That is correct. I'm new.
Yeah, I remember you now. It's Alex, right? I remember talking to you about Oscar way in the back future, back there.
You do remember. I don't bring that up.
I do.
You do remember.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, you guys are doing great work. Keep it up over there. Good job. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks. So, and that looks like pretty solid consensus. Let's say I'll put out a message on the mailing list after this to appeal for other volunteers and whatever, but write up what looks like going to be a running code kind of hackathon, which is great. So I'd like to move on to the PRs now and see if we can get some approval to do things, because there's been a lot of activity. Who's been working on these things wants to show? I think 111 is the current state of the art, but I wouldn't want to put words into people's mouths. Henk, do you know?
I don't want to say I know. Is my mic working?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Because my voice indicator does not work, so I can't see if it's working. Okay. My big item is not necessarily PR. Just a second. We have to decide on what to pull into submission for next version today, actually. That's all I'm saying. We have some pretty controversial, groundbreaking proposals to discuss, and we should have at least some indication what's in, what's out for this submission. So keeping that in mind, I want to go through PRs actually really quick right now.
Yeah. Yeah, good. And let me, if you keep taking notes, Hannah, so I'm going to share the tab.
Yeah. For what it was, actually, I reviewed Steve's PR where he fixes some of the editorial aspect, the cram down fixes. So that's for me at the low hanging fruit, but one that actually makes the cleans up the brittleness of the document.
Yeah. So so you've got the cram down format fixes, which has been endorsed but not approved. I'm going to run very quickly. If Steve or Hannes, as you've read these, if you want to pick on very specific things, please do. But otherwise, as you can see in my screen share, the differences are, technical, just making the bullets work correctly. These are the same words, as you can see, because it's not dark green, it's still light green. So it's the same words, just fixing line lengths, fixing tab stops in the diagram. Yeah, so any concerns on accepting this one into the submission?
So
I just added a sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, Hank's approved it. There we go. That's awesome.
Yeah. Like sneakily.
Yes. So regarding the previous one,
This one?
111.
Oh well, let's hang on. I want to do the simple ones first.
Okay, good. Please go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to do. We'll do all of them, Cedric. Don't worry. But
okay, sorry, I was confused. Please go ahead.
No, it's okay. So looks like the cram down one is good. It's been approved. So let's get that in for the submission next Monday. Then I think so. Yeah, stay in the queue, Cedric, because I think we are now in a position where we've got 4 PRs all trying to do the same thing. So Steve, Ori, anyone else who knows, is it the case that 111 here kind of supersedes the other three? I believe it kind of incorporates mine, even though mine was approved. I think it's been superseded. So yeah, are we good to abandon the other three and just review 111, or do we need to potentially cherry pick?
I see 111 and 104 as two alternatives, so I think we need to discuss them together.
Okay.
Either we fix it or we remove it, but it's clearly your choice there.
Yes.
Okay,
We can't just ignore 104. Sorry.
Great. Okay. So what order is more useful to discuss in?
I think we should discuss 104 and see if there is a consensus. Then it has an impact on 111 and potentially others.
Yes. So what I will propose maybe is that I think when 111 makes complete sense if we keep feed. So if we do keep feed, then changing to BSTR, I think is a local improvement. So or maybe that's very controversial, but at least to me it looks less controversial, which leaves the main decision of whether we keep feed or remove them.
I mean, what are you suggesting? I wasn't quite clear regarding 104.
Yeah, let me try to speak to this. I think there's, I've been trying to follow this pretty closely, but not in the last little bit. But the essentially, I was hearing a lot. First of all, the concept of feed, I don't think is obvious to people when they first get to SCITT what was meant by it in the first part of the draft. The idea that feed is a product name or a collection or a reference to a product isn't usually what I think of as feed, and I don't think that it's appropriate for a submitter to SCITT to define the feed. That is a way of grouping statements that would be appropriate for viewers. I believe that the submitters to SCITT should provide only immutable references like our attributes of the actual submission. Now, if you want to call a feed the current thing, like in 1.1.11, it was saying, well, we're just going to have feed be a collection of attributes that are describing the artifact, and then that is fine. But I don't think the word feed represents what that is. On the other hand, what I think of as feed is a less immutable, if you will, way of grouping things together that are at the whim of people that are trying to view this thing, and they may want to group things together in some other way, and based on the attributes of the artifacts that may not be apparent to the submitter when they put them in. And so I think it's hard for by submitter, I guess I should say the word issuer. So when the issuer first creates these entries into SCITT, I believe the only thing that they should be defining is attributes of the artifact or the thing that they're talking about, and not necessarily trying to talk about, well, I guess they could talk about other entries in SCITT if they want to try to group them together and say this is now feed, but that would be a separate kind of a thing than just submitting an artifact. And so I think there is a difference between what you would want to do with the way feed was first, and I'll try to stop because I can tell that I'm not being as concise as I'd like to. But the bottom line for me is that when the issuer submits things into SCITT, it should be immutable immutable information about the artifact itself, and not trying to set up how people will view it later. And then that can be done at a higher level. Thank you.
Okay,
Yes, so I agree with what Ray said, but I think it applies equally to registration info and to feed. And I think both feed and registration info provide additional information set by the issuer, and that may be relevant for grouping or more generally to the transparency service. And so I would suggest we focus the discussion on whether we want to separate the feed from the registration info, or whether we are okay with people putting the feed or whatever else they want to interpret in the registration info, so that you don't need a distinguished top-level header for feed as opposed to the rest of registration info. I think that's the core of the argument for removing feed. Not that we don't need all use cases, but that we cannot agree on their interpretation. And so leaving that to be defined inside of registration info until we reach a consensus is the right way to make progress. So I think that's the main argument for adopting 104. If we do not, I think, as I said, a smaller question, which is probably also something easier to agree on, would be to turn the data type from TSTR to BSTR, which I think is a fine local change. But of course, if we get rid of it, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yogesh.
I was just first I wanted to ask, but maybe this question is slightly off topic now, because can't we keep both beast and text both with the type choice in CDDL facility and a code point? But before that, I mean, the fundamental problem is, unless we define clearly what is the scope of the feed, like what exactly is supposed to do in the spec, what is its right function, how it is supposed to operate, unless we have a consensus on that, do we want to keep it in an ambiguous state, is my question to all of the other editors, because we still not have kind of everybody is not on the same page as to what is the scope and the purpose of SCITT feed. So I would put it that way. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Yogesh. Sirvan.
So I commented a little bit on 104, and to me, this discussion seems to be slightly missing what I hope is the actual thing that needs to be discussed, which is a signed statement needs to indicate immutably, to Ray's point, that this is actually a statement from the issuer, the purpose of that signed statement. If we're relying on the details of that signed statement such that we can infer the purpose, I think we're really missing out here, right? That creates lots of confusion attacks. That it misses out on a core part of the transparency guarantee. So we must have, and I don't see any way around this, and no one has articulated any way around this. We must have a purpose in the signed statement, and it has to go in the header, right? It can't go in the payload, because every single signed statement must have a purpose. So feed as a name, of course we can change any name, I don't mind that. But the purpose of a feed is to make certain that a sequence of statements on the same topic, i.e. for the same purpose, shares a similar value, so that you can understand as an issuer the sequence of statements you've made for a purpose, and as a consumer the sequence of statements that an issuer has made for that purpose. For example, if we have an issuer A that needs to make a statement about some topic, if they need to make statements about other topics, effectively, if you do not have a purpose in there, you must create a new issuer. And now you have all kinds of confusion about identity and issuers for purpose and all this stuff. So I really haven't heard anything that replaces feed. I've heard people saying that they aren't sure what they would use it for, that's fine. Maybe they only have one feed for their particular use case. But I've certainly articulated a bunch of use cases on 104 where a purpose is strictly required. So I'm a little bit missing the core of the discussion here, which is if we don't want to call it feed, that's fine. Maybe that's the whole sum of it. But if not, how do people propose distinguishing the purpose of a signed statement? Now, to Cedric's point, if we want to move it into a different location, I really don't mind. I don't care what it's named or where it is, but we must have something that distinguishes the purpose of the statement. Thanks.
Thanks,
so
Cedric. Very clear. Steve?
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Sylvan is referring to. Is we need some way to correlate a collection of statements around a thing that the issuer released, made a statement about. And the main argument I heard was there's interpreting a string, which is why why I made the PR around converting it to a B string. And it's literally, it's a 1 character change so that we can have a way to correlate objects. I do think we should clarify it, but I feel losing it will put us back and will leave a gap. So that's why I made the move of the proposal to convert it to a B string, continue to focus on how we could clarify the definition. I think the definition is actually pretty good, and John went a step further. If we later want to turn it into the name topic, that's a conversation. To Ori's point, you can put a sub in the B string, and that's what making it a B string makes it. So this way you can use a sub, you can use something else, but you're not tied to a specific, the issue is not tied to a specific one. So that was it. Thanks.
Okay, well, I would like to just fill in a couple things here. Yes, I think the thing should be named something else, but apart from that, we have reg info, which is a collection of name value pairs, whatever you want to put in there. That can have additional structure to say, all right, well, we have a purpose defined, we have a product defined, we have a lot of things that are defined in a standard way so that people can take a look at that information in there. And we really only need one of those collections. We need a collection of things that describes the attribute in the protected header and that is not in the artifact. That is absolutely clear. It needs to be at least one thing. And the reality is that most of these systems that if you just look around and you look at content management systems that manage a whole bunch of documents or whatever, they have a whole slew of standard descriptors that will help them manage the whole thing. Trying to put that into one and say, okay, we're going to have this one field. We've already started to build some structure in there. I think that, and that's why I think that doesn't hurt for it to go away. I think it's confusing to have it and just say all the attributes go into the reg info. That'd be fine with me. And then we can say, all right, here is the number one thing that we're going to say, which is product name or subject or whatever it is for products. And if that makes sense for this line of this use case, which is product, it may be, name of the software package with version number, semver, and so forth. A few things that have to be described. If you're going to try to put that into one string, then you're going to have to build in some syntax in there, URL stuff or something else, or now B string. So I think having two structured descriptors is too much. Just have one, and then we can work on what goes in there. Thank you.
Nick, you're next.
Thank you, Yogesh. Yeah, I agree with this concept of having a purpose. You need something like that. I know from our own operations with our own trust registry, we have a concept of a declaration type. So that when someone submits a statement into our trust registry, it has to be identified with a specific declaration type. So it could be an SBOM, so that's a declaration type, but there has to be some understanding of what the statement represents or what it is. And that speaks to the concept, I think, that was mentioned earlier by Sylvan with regard to purpose. So I completely agree. We need to have a purpose expressed.
Yeah, I kind of like to, I'm not against that concept, and I also agree. Only thing is, I think I like the way Ray put it, the way we should keep it at the level of key values, which let the issuer has the flexibility of how it wants to organize this, whatever you want to call it, topic or something. We don't want to kind of rigidly closed it in a way which kind of restrict somebody to do it this way or that way. If you restrict it in a specific syntax, then we need to describe how you want to you want to describe in detail what precise meaning of that. But if you want to keep it more towards the issuer's decision making, how it wants to identify a group of statements within made by itself, then we need to keep it a bit more abstract in the reg info as a named key value pair with some way to articulate it. Yeah, that's what I would say. Thank you.
I think I wanted to say that what Sylvan's proposing is slightly different than everybody else was talking about, where people were talking about product and feed discriminated per product. This is more along the lines of key usage and discriminating based on the usage of the signature, not the product or anything else. And I kind of lost that in some of the other comments so far. I don't want to lose what Sylvan's referring to. I'll hand it over to Sylvan at this point.
Literally what I was going to say. So Roy's way ahead of me. A feed is not a product, and certainly doesn't have anything to do with semantic versioning or product names or anything like that. A feed is indeed an issuer statement about the purpose of the signed statement. And you may have additional information in the payload or really possibly in registration info. Although I want to be careful there, that's not just a key value bag. And I think we should be quite careful of thinking of it as such. Your payload is arbitrary, but your registration info is things that you expect the SCITT instance to evaluate and to make a decision about whether it accepts this signed statement for registration on that particular SCITT registry. In advance of it being registered, right? That's very different from an arbitrary key.
So just
sure.
Next anyway. So maybe we can have a discussion about this interactively.
Awesome.
How is that a feed? The understanding of a feed to me is something that's sort of time based. There's a bunch of almost a stack that starts at time t0 and moves through time tn and has a series of entries. Feed, if you're talking about purpose or some other synonym for that to me is orthogonal to a feed. That's totally different. So I'm having a little bit of heartburn over just the term feed. I think we need to figure out a different way to do that.
Cool. I think that's a great discussion to have. So the reason I think that the word feed captures a lot of this important information is that indeed it is time-based. That when I make a statement as an issuer for a purpose, that doesn't mean that that purpose is discharged. It means that here is a topic in the IP multicast sense that I will be making statements on, and I may make statements on them in the future. And there is no point at which I can guarantee that I will make no future statements on that topic. So indeed, it is a feed. It is a time-based sequence of statements on a given purpose, and asking folks to reassemble the purpose from a collection of key value pairs in the reg info is missing the point. That means that now purpose is not clearly defined by the issuer and doesn't create a really time sequence, as you quite rightly point out. I think time sequence of statements on a topic for a purpose. Now, the word topic might be useful. I know that's one that the IETF has used previously. Feed is not an important word, but that time-based element you talked about, I think actually really is important. Is that helpful?
It is, but I think also there's more than that. I think, when we talk about feed, grouping, like somebody mentioned collection earlier. That's a great word, I think. Selection in the SQL sense of a bunch of related things is going to be extremely important for implementations. And feed doesn't, in my view, especially as we talk about it, doesn't capture that. Now, in terms of wanting to understand the issuer's context, yes, that is important also. However, if we look at use cases like, I have a bunch of steel, right? I'm selling you some steel. Here's my statement about the steel. Here's my statement about myself. Here's my notaries, all those things. Those have to be assembled after the fact, and they have to be assembled in a context of many other potential suppliers doing exactly the same thing to contribute to an individual supply chain. So there's got to be a way to navigate that. And feed struck me as the wrong word, I think, for,
I think it's for a different purpose.
Maybe, yeah. Also, yeah. But
make
I
one
guess
more
just hear me out.
comment
So I think, the feed is, I mean, it's sort of statement or issuer generated, right? That doesn't necessarily mean the user is going to be able to use that. The issuer can, group a bunch of things together by using the link that we're calling feed, but that doesn't provide a lot of utility when you're tracing back the trustworthiness of a fuller supply chain.
I disagree. Respectfully, I disagree quite a bit. I think it's literally the only thing that gives you any kind of traceability. So respectfully, I just disagree on it. I think the two incredibly important words you use there is collection and selection. I think those are powerful, important words and critical to this whole endeavor, and also not what feed is supposed to do. Feed is not establishing how an end user creates such collections and selections in the SQL sense. I think you're super right to bring those up. Feed is instead a statement from the issuer about purpose, and indeed, consumers will not rely only on feed to understand all of the receipts that they want to be looking at. I think that's insightful. Sorry, I'll turn off my thing now and make sure.
That's okay. I guess, I wanted to just mention that feed or no, we still need that SQL-like link to be able to collect these things, because I, at Hitachi, will be assembling hundreds of things to create into a product, and I need to attest to those in a number of different contexts as to their origin, their quality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I have to collect those, right? And the issuer is not going to help me with that. I have to have something that is issuer independent and that I can rely on to link them all together. So that's my. I do have to run. Actually, I'm sorry, I have another meeting, but I wanted to get that statement out.
Actually, we all ran a little bit over time, unfortunately. Just realized that. So I think we are not able to complete the discussion about the feed. I think we are still all over the map there.
Well, I think there was so if we can take that quality of discussion to the mailing list this week, that would be fantastic, because the two big things that we've heard discussed since 117 about the practicality of this just came out in that discussion, and I think if we spend the time to write these things down, we'll probably get somewhere. But at this stage, it might have to be something we work out in the hackathon rather than in the submission.
So, Sylvan, are you joining the hackathon?
Okay, so guys, we're way over time, so we should bring this to a close. But it would be great if we can carry on the mailing list. It'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
So long.
Thank you very much. See you later. Bye.